on blast.
Sheldon, let's just get it out of the way. I think we know who the MVPs of this episode are.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Shouts to Big T and CT, the dynamic duo.
Speaking of dynamic duos, I'm John Chidley Hill.
Hey, I see what you did there, and I like it. And I am Sheldon Alexander.
And this is You Killed It, the podcast about the challenge. Like I said, I mean, we'll go through the blow by blow, but off the top, what a performance by CT and Big T. Just heartwarming.
I thought you were just laughing because you noticed me take the gum out of my mouth as I realized that I'm chewing to start a podcast. Chewing gum. But yeah, I mean, CT and Big T, great performance for sure. There's really not much to this episode. You know what I mean? Like, the episode, you know, they try to still build up this whole Amber B and Gabby drama because Amber B's mad she got blindsided. And, you know, right off the top, though, we find out that Darrell wants his skull. Well, no shit, obviously. But Kyle says something that I wanted to get your take on. Kyle says that he thinks Amber B is one of the fakest girls in the house. Do you think that's true?
Yes. That is 100% the sense that I'm getting. And we don't just have to take Kyle's word for it, and Gabby has said it as well, but we see it not even in confessional. It's a little, I mean, there's for sure confessional gangsters on the show, but it's different when there's a lot of confessional gangsters on the show for sure, but there's a difference between, you know, talking shit in confessional and being friendly to people's faces. It's not great. But we see in the candid parts where we'll have a scene where Amber is speaking to Big T about how she rides with the rookie girls. And then, you know, cut to her talking to KC about how she's been Big Brother since day one. Mm-hmm. And it's a small house. That doesn't go unnoticed. And we see it in this episode too, where she's chatting up Devin in the liquor dome. It's
just doing too much, which I think a lot of people do, especially during their first go around on the show, right?
Yeah.
Because you think that you have to play friends with everybody when you don't really. It just comes down to having your numbers. And so she still thinks, you know, oh, I should be nice to Devin because you never know. But really, it doesn't matter because, you know, you and Devin being on the same side, it's not a thing where that matters because you have numbers that he doesn't. That's it.
It's also a classic Big Brother move because on Big Brother, you always have to be taking everyone's temperature. On Big Brother, you have to go around the house and you have to check in on everyone and see where they're at and take a read of where they're at least once a day, if not more. In the challenge, it's not a big deal if you don't speak to someone for days. It's hard to do, but you don't have to talk game all the time on the challenge.
Exactly. And there's another level at play too when you're talking about Big Brother, because obviously some of those people will end up in the jury house and could be a vote for you to win. But in this, it doesn't matter. So she's still trying to figure that part out and she'll get it. And obviously her partner in being Darrell, he's just a different dude as well. So it's not like he's out here playing that politic game himself either. So she's in a tough spot. And, you know, Gabby says her and Devin were the worst double agents ever. And she's mad she didn't go in. CT trying to explain it's a rookie mistake. And both Devin and CT acknowledge the fact that they both made mistakes multiple times through their challenge careers. And Devin's still here making the same mistakes. And he says he can't stop being himself, right? He can't shut himself up. And that's been his worst is the worst thing about his game this season. So you look at it now and you think CT knows that he basically had to win this challenge. And Devin probably wanted that to happen as well, because if Devin doesn't have that happen, well, then he's probably going in. Yeah. And we know how it plays out, but at the end of the day, that's kind of how things are lining up, right?
I mean, Devin nailed it when he said in this conversation with Gabby and CT, unfortunately, I'm incredibly annoying. And it's a shame because, a lot of people online, like on the Facebook group, on Twitter, everywhere, they've said, like, Devin's carrying this season in terms of entertainment value
Mhm.
because he's not playing scared. He's entertaining. He's doing work in the confessional booth. But man, he's not helping his game by constantly running his mouth. And I say this as someone who spent all of his teen years and 20s running his mouth, but like in every aspect. I'm not going to pretend like I'm tough. Like I was definitely writing checks that I could not cash with how much shit talk came out of these lips. And it's just
Okay.
like you gotta like it's you can chirp, and chirping can be funny, and chirping can be really disarming, and like people might even like it if you like gently make fun of them. And I think you see Kyle as an example do a great job of that.
Yeah.
Kyle makes fun of people, but people aren't annoyed with Kyle because there's like some genuine moments that come out of Kyle, and he has a better sense of when to can it. Like Kyle will get off his one zinger, and then he's just quiet.
Yeah.
Maybe not quiet, but he's not like just going back to the well. Especially when Devin doesn't read, or maybe he reads and just doesn't care when people are annoyed with him. Kyle at least is like, okay, like I got my dig in. Like I'm just gonna laugh it off and like move on.
Yeah.
Um,
But speaking of also like just someone who talks a little too much, kind of in the same light as Devin, Josh, right? Like Josh is talking about how he doesn't want to go in, but he would be comfortable going back in. And, he's just saying that. We know he doesn't mean it, but he's just staring at Nany. And I thought this was funny because this was a classic Josh episode, minus for him having a fight. The only thing that was missing would be Josh having a screaming match with someone. And we'll get to it a little later on. And I'll give Josh a lot of credit for some things in this episode that we'll see later on. We'll talk about later on. But in this moment here, this is classic Josh just being friend zoned. Like, how many different seasons have we seen Josh get friend zoned, right? And I'm thinking about Georgia. There's Nany, obviously. There's someone else that I'm missing. Laurel? No.
Amanda,
Amanda. Yes. Yes, Amanda. How could I forget Amanda? Shouts to Amanda. I always liked Amanda. I miss Amanda on the challenge.
me
Um,
too. I loved Amanda.
yeah, Amanda was funny. She was grade A challenge entertainment. But yeah, he's just staring at Nany, giving her the googly eyes, and she's like, "Come on, I'm your sister." And Josh is just, he's falling again, and I'm just thinking, is this a bit for him? Or is he really trying to like make a move on Nany? Because it was kind of strange, and then eventually she just gets up and she repeated multiple times, "This is getting creepy." And when you're using the term creepy multiple times, it's not a good look for you, Josh. This is not one of the times I'm going to big you up in this episode for sure. Because I don't know what you were on.
I'm disappointed in us that we didn't predict that this would happen. Because like I don't know, nowhere in this season have you or I been like, oh man, Josh is going to fall in love with someone, let alone Nany. But like he does this every season, and
Yeah. See, I go the other way. I think it was so predictable we didn't even have to mention it. Like, I just thought it was obvious because it literally always happens. Everyone
that's
is
fair.
nice to him. He ends up falling in love with them.
And you know what makes it real sad? Like real sad, more than just like the surface level pathetic that this scene was. Given the way they were dressed, the vibe, I had the real sense this was around like late morning, early afternoon. Like they hadn't like gotten like dressed for the day, but they clearly like hadn't gotten like they weren't drunk, they weren't
Mhm.
hungover. This is like 11 a.m. in the goddamn morning that
Yeah.
he's like sending the googly eyes. Maybe, may I don't want to say acceptable, maybe understandable if it's like 1 a.m. and you've been drinking all night.
He's shooting a shot.
You're shooting your shot because you're drunk and lonely and horny, sure. But like man, it's 11 a.m. Like you're talking game. Why are you shooting the googly eyes, especially with a camera present? Like they've
That's
known
what
each
I
other at
think.
this
That's what
point
I'm
for
saying. I think
years.
it could just be an act. It could just be a bit where he's trying to get some camera time because Nany's like, come on, I'm your sister. Da da da. Like this is getting weird. Da, da, like I don't know what was going on. It was super weird. I felt uncomfortable watching it. So
Yeah,
that's where I
yeah,
was at.
fair.
I also felt uncomfortable watching CT and Big T, their little workout that they had going on, because I didn't really know
This
what
was
that
definitely a
was.
bit. Like
Yeah,
this
I didn't
was
know what that
definitely.
was, what was going on, but it was funny.
At first, I was like, "Oh, this is nice." Like CT's trying to help Big T,
Yeah.
and then like the way he was describing to her like what the bands would do, he's like, "Yeah, it's a
Mhm.
biohack," and I'm like, "Is he like fucking around here? Like, is this?"
Just a
And like,
sponsorship.
it was clear that it became clear like once I realized she was in flip flops. I'm like, "Oh, they're just bored," and she like
Yeah.
made a comment about getting in better shape, and he's just
Mhm.
like amusing himself and amusing her, and it's just
Yeah.
like I really, really like how their partnership has developed over the
Mhm.
course of this season.
Mhm.
Also, I can't, CT's been on this show for 18 seasons, and keep in mind, he took breaks after Diem died, and he took a break. Well, he was suspended from the show for a couple of years. Like
Mhm.
he's been at this for like more than a decade, and it's so funny to see CT be like the nurturing, supportive, like charming, bit of a dad bod version of
Yeah.
himself now compared to the like walking monster that actually gave me nightmares uh, back when he was like smashing people's jaws
Yeah.
on the first night and like getting kicked off of the show and like ripping doors off of their hinges. Like it's so it's amazing how much someone can change over the course of a decade.
A completely different dude for sure. And it's funny where you've seen him turn into a different person, but you look at someone like Lolo who continuously, and I know we're talking a shorter span of time here, but she's shown very little change from since we first saw her on this show, however many years ago that was. And there's no growth. She, for someone who's been on a bunch of different reality shows, you can tell she doesn't really see how she's viewed, if that makes sense. So when
No,
she's getting mad about not being thrown in the elimination, and then she says, quote, I'm not going to sit here on the elimination stage and not getting to go in when I could be at home training for the Olympics, close quote. But you sound like such a jackass.
oh yeah,
That doesn't make you sound like you're trying to make people be sympathetic for you, but you're going at it a completely different way. And when we talk about this show a lot, we talk about, why we like certain people or why we don't, or, the change in CT. When you see things like that, you end up wanting to root for certain people.
mm-hmm,
And I'll even say
absolutely.
later on when we get to Josh, I'm not saying I'm rooting for Josh, but I'm saying I saw some little bit of change. I was like, oh, okay. It's not all horrible there. But Lolo, it's just like every time she came on the screen, I was waiting for the scene to end. It's just annoying, and it's just the same bit over and over again. Like you could have played the exact same scene from like 4 episodes ago, or from the last season when she was on, and it's the exact same. Like I'm gonna lose it. Nobody wants me here. Nobody wants to go against me. Blah, blah, blah. And think about it. Her and CT were dealing with the exact same situation
Mm-hmm.
in terms of thinking that they're blocking you and they don't want to give you a chance to get the skull. But yet, look at the different ways that they went about it, especially when you think it's Lolo and Nam and CT and Big T, right? CT and Big T were still out here competing. Lolo
Mm-hmm.
and Nam had a chance, the same amount of chances that CT and Big T did, but they just
Also,
never took advantage of it.
to your point, CT does not have as strong a partner as Lolo does. No disrespect to
Exactly.
Big T, who we love. She's
Yeah.
great. But physically, there's no comparing what Nam brings to the table versus Big T.
Yeah.
And obviously Big T is more fun. She's more communicative. But CT's been dealt, in some ways, a tougher hand. And there's actually a scene, which I thought was remarkable, where Lolo is working out slash sulking by herself outdoors. And basically everyone in the house is talking about how she's mentally checked out and like
she's about
just
to leave.
eating
You could
herself
see it
alive.
then.
You could see it, but it was remarkable, like who was having that conversation. Josh and Devin were part of that conversation. They hate each other. Like people in the house who dislike each other were united in talking about like how bad Lolo's attitude was. And Sheldon, I'm gonna say the straightest, whitest, broiest thing I've ever said on this podcast. Are you ready?
I don't think I am, but okay.
It reminded me of an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience because there is an episode where former UFC fighter Dominic Cruz came on and he was talking about, he had, for those of you who are not into mixed martial arts, he had a string of really bad injuries, mainly tearing his ligaments, all of the ligaments in his knees. And it's actually, I know people don't like Joe Rogan. It's fair. I don't like Joe Rogan either. But this interview is really interesting, and I invite our listeners to check it out. Dominic Cruz, Joe Rogan Experience, talking about mental health. And he talks about how Cruz, that is, spoke about how as an elite athlete, when he couldn't work out anymore because his legs, his knees were totaled, he realized how weak he was mentally and how his routine of working out and being, at the time, he was pound for pound the best mixed martial artist in the world. How when that was taken away from him, he realized he had nothing. Like you take away, the belts, the money, that record, when all that's stripped away, he realized he had nothing because he put everything he had into his athletic pursuits, into fighting in his case. It's really clear to me that's what's going on with Lolo. All Lolo has is competing in the Olympics. It's all she knows. It's all, Darrell sort of touches on it in a confessional. It's the only thing that she can compare things to. Something is either like the Olympics or it's not like the Olympics. That's all there is to her life. And honestly, as annoying as I find Lolo, that's very sad. And that's really unhealthy.
Yeah, it's her life's work, right? And she looks at it in the sense of that's how she gets her value, right? That's how she values herself. That's where she gets her accomplishments through working out, through training, through winning and losing. That's kind of how she governs her life. And you can tell that. And it's weird, but it's just the reality of the situation. And I thought it was interesting because as you go into the next challenge, this was a challenge that you would assume her and Nam would probably do really well in. I thought this was a pretty epic challenge. Like I thought it was really badass and cool.
This was the best challenge. This was the best daily challenge all season. This was
I think
so entertaining.
Yeah, I think sometimes when they come on and they're like, oh, this is going to be really cool. It's like, oh, okay, that's not bad. But, first off, you're standing on the front of a boat while it's moving. And I don't care how fast the boat's moving. You're still standing on a boat while it's moving.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know if anyone's ever been to a boat cruise, like a party cruise. What are those things called?
Yeah, party cruise.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like you get on a boat ride. Yeah, booze cruise, sure. But like, I don't know about y'all, but after a couple drinks, my little 1-2 step might be a little different than it was at the beginning of the night. That's all I'm saying. And that boat's not going fast. So my point, though, is that first off, to stand in balance on the front of the boat, then to jump onto a rope and hold on to that rope while you're dangling from a helicopter, then drop yourself in the middle of this zone and then swim. Like the adrenaline rush would just be enough alone. Like it was just an incredible thing to see. But I will say, and I don't know if this is my line of the episode, but it might as well. It might be. I found it weird because given the context of Nany, it kind of made me go like, Really? She said, quote, anything to do with helicopters, I get weirdly excited about. And maybe this is completely unfair, but I feel like if you watch this show enough, when Nany said that, I was kind of like, it kind of made me interested. Like, what are we exactly talking about right now? Like, is there some stories that, might be on some challenge uncut or something? Like, what are we talking about here? You know what I mean? I don't know. But anyways,
I
I thought
like to
this
think
challenge was incredible.
I like to think of Nani building like model helicopters and like just like getting the
See, that's
like
not where I was going with this at all, but it's okay.
like an eyewitness, those eyewitness books that we had in like public school libraries when we were kids, where they'd be
Yeah.
like, yeah, like one of those books, but on helicopters. Like I imagine she's super into the nuts and bolts of like
Mhm.
Sikorsky's or
Yeah.
whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's what I pictured.
Okay. All right.
that,
Fair
that was
enough.
the most
Fair enough.
Sheldon. Like, okay, I podcast with an idiot sometimes. That's fine.
I would never say such a thing. I would never say such a thing. But yeah, let's keep it moving though. Let's keep it moving though, because
Sure.
everybody went, and there were some kind of funny moments, but there weren't like it wasn't really the challenge where you're breaking down every single person going through, right? Like
No.
Casey and Leroy, they worked well as a team. They did a good job. Amber B and Darrell, same thing. They were pretty funny. I thought it was good when the Killas were going, Cam and Kyle, and the commentary from Leroy, where he's like, "Oh, look at my girl, she's ready down in her football stance." And then he said, and I actually wrote this down. I should probably take a picture of it, but I actually wrote down, quote, "Look at her over there looking all thick." But it's spelled THICCCCC. Because that's how we said. Certain people are going to understand what I'm saying.
I understand.
We're putting down. Yeah. But anyways, Cam and Leroy, just a great couple. I'm enjoying them on this season so much. But I guess the first thing to talk about for real on in this whole thing was Josh. And I know I'm still not at the point yet where I'm going to say something positive about Josh, but we're getting there. This was one of the worst performances we've seen in a while in a competition. I mean, because I don't even know what he was trying to do. Like, was he trying to grab the rope to hand Nany the rope while grabbing his at the same time? Like, it was just Josh doing way too much. And, he tried to grab the rope and I guess missed it or handed it to Nany. And then Nany falls off the boat, which was super dangerous, first off, because she could have fallen back like into the boat, which wouldn't have been good either. But then Josh didn't even get come close to getting his rope, and then has the audacity to look back at the judges or the producers, whoever it is on the boat, and say, okay, so we get to go again, right? And they're like, no, you're disqualified. He's like, what? What? He's acting surprised. He's like, dude, are you serious right now? What's going on right now? But anyways, yeah, typical Josh, as everyone was saying, just a horrible, horrible, horrible performance by him.
Just brutal. I also had to know when he says, "Can we go again?" And the producer's like, "No, that's it. You're disqualified." And Josh goes, "No, DQ? No fucking way." Like, yes, Josh. Yes, fucking way. You idiot. Like, the entire point of the cut, like, the entire point. Why would you get to go again? Why?
Yeah.
And
So
I think what happened, and I think this is a key thing, and we see it again, is he was so it's a competition where you just have to focus on what you're doing, not what your partner is doing.
yeah,
Your responsibility is to get yourself onto the rope, to hold on as long as possible, to let go at the right time, and to swim. That's all you got to do. You don't worry about what your partner is doing. And he clearly, for whatever reason, decided that he had to like be chivalrous, I guess, for
yeah,
his air
I think
quote
that's definitely
sister.
it. I think that's
Like,
definitely it. He's trying to do too much to impress her, to make it seem like, hey, I'm going to get you your rope and get my rope, and we're going to win, and we're going to be the best, and we're going to be Mr. and Mrs. James Bond and win this challenge. And it just looked horrible for him. And I will say this much: Devin saved him. Devin
yeah,
saved him from embarrassment because, I mean, Devin trolling him, it was funny for a bit, but then he started going way too far because I think you didn't even have to make fun of Josh. It was such a bad performance that the results were going to speak for themselves. You didn't have to do all that. So Josh was doing too much, but then Devin was doing too much. And I'm saying all this before Devin even went and
Yeah.
shit the bed himself. So I don't know. The trolling of Josh, it was funny. And even Gabby, who I'm growing to really like Gabby a lot more. But Gabby was like, "Are you done yet?" And Devin's like, "Nah, I think I'm going to go a couple minutes more." It was just so over the top. But I said I was going to give Josh a bit of credit here. I'm giving him credit for not reacting
Hmm.
because after a while, I wouldn't have blamed him for reacting.
No.
And even after Devin sucked, he still didn't or at least we didn't see it. We didn't see him go back at Devin and scream at him or like say anything like, "Oh, see, good for you." Like there was nothing. And I give Josh a lot of credit for that. I really do. There's no shade. There's no buts coming. It's just, nope. I give Josh credit for that. And I'm not sure the last time I've said that on this podcast.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I hope it's a sign of a more mature Josh. I
Mhm.
don't think it is necessarily, but like it's a step in the right direction. The thing about Devin is that's a situation where like Devin has antagonized Josh so much that if anything, the most powerful thing he can do is just be quiet, and when like Josh or Nany looks at him, just go, "I'm not going to say anything."
Yeah.
And like make a show of that. Like that, there's something to be said for the punch that's not thrown. You know what I mean? And like I'll
No,
give a
but
great
also you can't talk that much shit before you go.
no. No, you can't. For sure not. Like, if Leroy talked shit, not that he would, but like Leroy having completed it successfully and Leroy not being the best swimmer by his own
Mhm.
admission, if Leroy was talking that shit, okay, maybe. But Devin, and like what's also brutal is that Devin is doing this, what, a day, 2 days after Gabby, and CT were talking, and he said that he like has to learn how to turn it off, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
No, totally. Totally
there,
agree.
there were some other unimpressive moments. Anissa just sort of
Yeah.
sliding off, in her own words, like a turd into the toilet. Um, I think we do, God help us, have to talk about Lolo and Nom. Once again, Nom does fine. I'm not saying Nom's the best, but he's above
Yeah. Yeah.
average at these daily competitions. He holds his own.
Mm-hmm.
Lolo loses her shoe, starts to swim sideways. She insists that there was like extra drag from losing her shoe and immediately declares that they've lost as soon as they get on there.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
I,
there's
I
just extra drag because she's a drag by nature.
she
That's
is a
it.
drag.
But like I don't have much to say about that. It's just like whatever. I don't even know why you're swimming backwards, like being extra. Like nothing losing your shoe doesn't make you have to swim backwards instead of swimming frontwards. Like I don't understand how that makes sense.
And
But
also, if you feel your shoe falling off, you know what you do? You kick off your shoe like immediately. You just say like "fuck my shoe" and you focus on the task at hand, right?
I got nothing. I got nothing on her. Devin and Gabby, we mentioned that. Devin pulls a Josh. Karma came for Devin, and I mean, he had a terrible attempt because it looked even worse because Gabby got up so easily and he was just standing there like frozen, not even really reaching for his rope. Like, I don't even know what he was doing. It was a terrible performance by him.
I
But
almost wonder if he threw the competition. It was so bad.
no.
No, you think it was genuinely just bad?
Yeah, because he would want to win. He would definitely want to
That's
win.
true.
And I know he wouldn't want to make the decision again. I
Hmm.
mean, I shouldn't say that. The only reason I do say that, though, is because him winning would guarantee that he's not going in.
Yeah,
Right. So I mean, unless Gabby somehow convinced him to put them back in again, because it could have been a female challenge, but I doubt that would have happened. But who knows? And then, as mentioned, right, Big T and CT, they're super supportive. Big T was just like the funniest shot was Big T just swinging from the rope with this huge smile on her face. I was like, is this like, have you done this before? Like, it was so weird. And I love the genuine reactions from CT because that was my reaction watching it. Like, where
Yeah.
did this come from? I was stunned. And CT had so many great quotes. He's just like, I love his confession. He's like, don't look at me. I'm just as shocked as you are. I thought that was hilarious. He's yelling at her, like, have you been hiding this the whole time? And she's just calm and cool. She's like, oh, that felt marvelous. He's like, marvelous. Their whole back and forth was just so amazing. And then she drops these bombs that we didn't know. She did swim team when she was in school. Right? It's like, what? Like, how did that never come up before? I've never heard her mention that. They've
Not
done
one.
water challenges before. I've never heard that mentioned, but it was a great surprise. And then what was her the ace in the hole that she did pole dancing?
She had done pole dancing lessons, and I loved, first of all, CT mugging for the camera through this conversation as they're on the speedboat. Was the whole thing was like we could have transcribed the entire conversation. It was so funny and so like real, like so genuine. But when Big T tells CT that she thought she did well because of her pole dancing lessons, he goes, apparently I've been training for these challenges all wrong. You mentioned when she said it was quite marvelous, and he goes, fuck that. It was
so good.
I mean, what a just like beautiful like 5 minute scene. And what's nice is that privately in confessional, CT has had his doubts, but has regularly told Big T, like, has been nice, has been supportive. When he did lose his temper with her, he apologized. He's been a good partner. Likes her. Yeah, he's been a good partner. He genuinely likes her. She genuinely likes him. They're quite an odd couple, but like, it was so nice to see two partners, first of all, like each other and get along, and just like the excitement he had for her. And this is their second time winning it, isn't it? Because they also won the. Oh no, they came. Did they win the one?
They won early. No, they won early on because remember, CT was like, "I'm going to just let Big T handle it" because it was a female elimination.
That's right. You're right. When she had to hang off of the side of the cliff, but like, I mean, anyone who watches the show, like, they've got to be the sentimental favorites.
Yeah, I mean, the dynamic between the two of them has just been so good, and everything that you talked about earlier in terms of the CT that we know from the beginning is not the person that we see now. And you think about how would that CT have handled being partnered with Big T, and it's just when you wrap all that together and just see how well they're working. But also, he says it all the time. All I ask is that you give it your all. Because he's been on this show long enough to know that there's certain people who are just like, I quit or I can't do this. And that's not her attitude. She's at least going to try.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that part is awesome. And he appreciates that. And so even when TJ comes out afterwards and TJ's like, listen, normally I'll like say, 3 teams, whatever, but this one, forget that. CT and Big T just dominated this entire challenge. I thought that was really cool. That was really cool.
It was really cool. And also, like, I love Big T. I've never heard any fan put down Big T. Mm-hmm. It's so nice to see her, like, this is a confidence building moment.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I hope it encourages her to keep coming back. She says that TJ telling her that she killed it is like the highlight of her challenge career. Honestly, I hope it's not the highlight. Like, I hope she has further highlights.
Yeah.
Because she's great, and it's nice to see just like everyone was on board. Like, the reception they got when they came back on shore was great. And I also want to say, from a production standpoint, I think one of the reasons why this daily challenge was so enjoyable was because we got to see some of the banter on the shore. Like, yeah, obviously there was Devin chirping Josh, but we had this great moment where Corey is saying like, oh, like, put me in. Corey couldn't compete because he's the rogue agent. He doesn't have a partner. And he's like, just put me in. I want to do this so bad because he liked the idea of being on the helicopter. And Kyle says something like, just win. So like, don't let your partners go home. Like, that's the problem. Like, it's just like, it was fun seeing the banter going on the shore. and CT and Big T coming on the shore and everyone cheering for Big T and everyone, I think, genuinely happy that she did well. Like that was just great to see. And like that's something we haven't seen a lot of this season. We haven't seen a lot of the like character moments, for lack of a
Yeah,
better phrase.
definitely agree. And like the non-character moment that came up soon after was obviously Lolo crying because she was embarrassed and she's used to being the best. And like the challenge is like, it's amazing to me that she still doesn't realize that the challenge is not the Olympics. Like it's not the bobsled, it's not hurdles, it's not whatever. Like it's just completely different. And the fact that she still doesn't get that is so strange to me. And so I don't even really want to talk about it much more. Like she ends up leaving, cool, gives some like terrible speech before she leaves, whatever. The actual gameplay, CP was going around trying to figure out what's going on and trying to tell everyone that he wants to go against Josh. So basically, what ends up happening from that point on, even through the Liquor Dome, which we still get like a very PG version of the Liquor Dome. And I'm convinced of my theory that they're just trying to open up the challenge and branch it out more as you put it on like CBS apps or CTV apps. You're trying to branch it out more so it can be like a PG show. That's what I think is going down right now.
I think
But
so too.
it's just my assumption because
I
it's totally toned down.
You've convinced me.
You barely see them drinking. Like they're kind of taking shots or playing flip cup, but not really like it was before. Not at all.
This we've seen on the challenge. We've seen people have threesomes on the challenge. Like
Yeah,
there's been
it's
some
been a while.
wild shit on this show.
Yeah. And we see none of that now.
They're definitely getting away from that.
Yeah. So, basically that whole narrative though turns into CT and Big T, but mostly CT trying to get everyone to vote in Josh. But Leroy and Cam, who've been doing a very good job of showing their cards, but not really. Leroy starts telling Nany, and then obviously they start telling Josh. CT wants Josh. But it builds up to everyone realizing the numbers game that's really going on here, right? Because do they have enough numbers to throw in Josh? And the answer is it was probably going to come down to Darrell, right? And we knew which side Darrell was going to lean towards. He's clearly not playing with CT. CT should have known that. And so that was the thing that made it so tough when you're trying to figure out what was going to happen next, right? And, meanwhile, while all this is going on, like, do you want to talk about Amber B and Devin?
I don't, I mean,
Gabby and that
not really.
dynamic?
Not really. I do.
Matter.
I just want to point out that I alluded to it earlier, but this is an example of how Amber is really fake. Because in confessional, like, I love Devin. He's fake to people's faces. Mm-hmm. She's like, it's just two fake people being fake to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I have to say there.
Yeah. And I guess that's why I was saying earlier, Gabby is calling it out. And I appreciate that more because I'd rather know that I don't fuck with somebody and they don't fuck with me. I don't want to play pretend, right? Like that's not how I roll. So I totally get that. But I do think it was interesting just seeing that whole thing because that's showing the rift between Gabby and Devin. But anyways, I did find it interesting. I knew which way Darrell was going to vote when they didn't show CT talking to Darrell.
Yeah.
Right? You only saw CT talking to Amber, and Amber didn't even really have an answer or a comeback or whatever. So at this point, Josh is trying to tell everyone that he's not shook, and he has to say that. But really, he was confident in the numbers that he had, and he proved to be right because in the deliberation, it was interesting how the deliberation went because I got to give Devin a lot of credit. He played the deliberation better than anyone I've seen in a very long time. But that also comes from years and years of being on the show. So
and
Devin,
maturity.
Well, yeah. And having an understanding of the game, right? Like he basically played the layup card and called it the layup card, like whatever you want to call it. This is just the reality of the situation. If you have a skull, you're giving CT a skull instead of keeping him as the layup, right? Mm-hmm. Like he's saying it doesn't make sense. Like, wouldn't you rather have me have a skull and go against me in the final, right? Because you could beat me. Instead, you're going to give one to CT. And on the flip side, if you don't have a skull, wouldn't you rather still have me in the game that you can then try and take my skull when you have power next week? And to be honest, he's right.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the flaw in that theory? If you're Leroy, if you're any one of those people sitting there, Devin's not a threat to you,
No.
right? That's the thing was super interesting. So if you didn't have a skull, like if you're Darrell and you don't have a skull, so whose skull are you going to take now?
Yeah.
Right. And that's a part to me where it was like, interesting. But Devin's gameplay, do you like Devin's gameplay just in terms of saying, hey, I'm the layup here. Do you guys really want to put me in?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the, I mean, all season, people have, it's clear that CT and Darrell and Lolo and Nam are not getting voted in because people are scared of them.
Yeah.
And like the reverse thinking of that is people are not scared of Devin. They're not scared of Josh. CT is putting himself in no matter what because he knows this is probably his only chance to get a skull.
Yeah.
So do you want to get rid of Devin? No. Do you want to get rid of Josh? Probably not. You want to get rid of Fessy. That's who you want to vote in, really. Right? Because then CT has a skull, sure. Or CT's eliminated from the game.
Exactly.
Those are the two outcomes.
I totally agree with you.
Put strong against strong. You don't want to put strong against weak.
Totally
and like,
agree.
I understand CT asking for the goof. I thought it was funny when Anissa's like, I don't know who the goof is. But given that CT has made his intentions so clear, the move has to be put in Fessy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing though, too, it still comes down to votes. Like if I'm Darrell, of course I'd want to do that. If I'm, Kyle and that side of the house, of course I'd want to do that. None of it really made sense. But of course, CT wants to get his skull as well. So he's not going to direct his side of the house to put in Fessy, right?
No.
So that's where the disconnect and the genius behind creating this strategy for the gameplay comes in. The part I didn't understand is Corey voting with the big brother side. Like I found that kind of weird, but he's just kind of laying low, I guess. Lolo voting against the big brother side because they didn't give her any votes last time. And then, as we know, Darrell ends up voting for Devin. So it's Devin versus CT. And there's a scene where Josh is crying. It's him, Corey, and Anissa. And Josh is crying because he's like, oh, it just feels good. I've never made it this far in the game before with friends. And it's good to know that, my friends had my back and, I had enough votes and I never made it this far. And that part hit me because I was like, oh, wait a second. So we've been talking about Josh being so insecure for however many seasons, right? And now you're really seeing it because he just wanted to be liked. Mm-hmm. So he thinks coming on this show, and even when I go back to his Big Brother season where he's banging on pots and pans and all that, and he thinks he's riling up the other side of the house. Like he's doing that to gain friends, to have people like him. And then now he's in a situation where finally people are actually able to prove to him that they do like him and they're on his side, right? Like they're on his side in the house. He has more numbers than the other side. And that part hit him because that's kind of all he's really been searching for, probably more than actually winning, right? Because he knows his level of what he's able to do. But at this point, he's like, oh man, like the move probably was to put me in instead of Devin and keep Devin around. But these people actually really like me. I thought Corey had a great line at the end of that because Josh is crying and, they do the group hug and Corey's like, see, that's that feeling right there when you don't have to go against CT. It's amazing because it's so true. It's so true. So there's a scene as mentioned where Lolo leaves and whatever. She gives like some stupid speech to everyone. She's leaving. All right, peace. Later, get out of here. We end up in the crater and you see the challenge and what the challenge is going to be. It was the one where Killa Cam went against Ashley, where you have to swing, you're attached to the rope and you're swinging and you're reaching for. So that's what it looks like. So we find out that it's Devin and um, did I get that right? Yeah,
CT.
Devin and Gabby. Devin and Gabby get sent down, but
Devin and Gabby.
before they even like go to CT to say like, "Hey, what do you want to do? Who are you guys going to vote for? Are you going to come down?" All of a sudden, the lights start going off, and it says there's been a security breach. And everyone's like, what does that mean? And Devin's just yelling, yes, yes, let's go, let's go. And nobody knows what it means. And TJ's just like, I told you, whenever you think you know what's coming in this show, you don't. You have no idea what's about to happen. There's been a security breach. And everyone's just like, what does that mean? And then the episode ends. So this is the first episode of the season where there's a cliffhanger
Yeah.
where we have no idea what's going to happen or what the security breach is, because it literally could be anything. Like it could be, it's both partners going in against each other. And they're going to get rid of, it's a double elimination. They're going to get rid of a guy and a girl, right? Like we don't know what it could be at all. So I kind of like it because it added some drama to an episode or to even a season that I feel like has been heavy on the gameplay, heavy on the strategy, but not really heavy on the drama. And I think this at least provides some form of, okay, I can't wait to see what happens next episode. Whereas for the majority of the season, it's kind of like, okay, I'm along for the ride and I'm playing along, but like it hasn't really like hooked me in. Like I don't really know what I'm watching at because there's so many twists and turns, if that makes sense.
It does. First of all, I have to say, I think it's pretty obvious what the security breach is.
Okay.
I think it's Teresa's coming back to even up the women numbers after Lolo
Oh,
leaves.
because Lolo leaves. Interesting. Yeah, that would
Because
make
that
sense.
security breach is the phrasing they used when Smashley came back. So
After someone else went home.
I
Yeah,
think it's just
interesting.
Teresa coming back because Lolo left, which I know is going to be disappointing. Not that people dislike Teresa, but just like it's this hype moment. It's just going to be like, here comes
You know
toxic.
what I You know what I watched recently, and I don't even know why I was watching this, or maybe someone posted about it on the challenge Facebook group, and that made me look up the scene on YouTube. But the classic CT versus Teresa basketball game,
Yeah,
if you've never seen that, you should go back and rewatch it. Or sorry, if you've never seen it, go back and watch it. If you have seen it, go back and rewatch it because I, for whatever reason, remembered it being like super short, but it was way longer of a scene than I thought it was. And they're good at basketball. Like
yeah.
they both are really good at ball, like handles, dribble, jumpers. Like I was like, what is okay? Like it's a really fun scene. And for us, we watched the challenge for a long enough time that we remember Teresa. So we know like Teresa was like fun and jokes in the house and like a really good old school challenge person, if that makes sense, right? And so on this one, we kind of don't know why people dislike her, don't know why people don't trust her, but we know that she's a good competitor. Well,
Yeah.
then she was a good competitor, and she was very Smashly like in terms of like character in the house, drama wise as well. But
Even
yeah,
this season,
I hope you're right. If you're right, that would be cool.
even this season, I liked, and I said this on a previous episode of You Killed It. I've liked Teresa this season because I feel that most of the people in the house are playing a very simple and scared game, and Teresa wasn't.
Yeah.
And Devin is not. CT is not. But there's a lot of people who are playing scared. And our listener, Mona, wrote in to ask me what we think of the Skull format for its second season. She liked it at first, like when it was introduced last season, but now she feels it's only encouraging people to play scared. What do you think at this point?
I think it's still TBD because there's something big that's going to happen soon.
Yeah, I I think it's still sort of up in the air. I wonder if part of the format of like being able to switch partners and sort of like the random selection of partners, I wonder how much that, well, it wasn't random selection originally, but I wonder how much that has influenced people's thinking and made them more conservative. I agree that people are playing scared and I don't like it. I like in my mind, basically everyone's attitude should be, I'm going to win a daily competition. I'm going to go and get my gold skull against the weakest possible competitor. and then I'm gonna get my friends in. Like that, I think should be like sort of like the default strategy, and we haven't seen that this season.
No, I agree with that.
We've already established who killed it for us this week. CT and Big T.
Yeah.
Obviously. But what was your line of the episode?
I gave like 4 already.
I know. It was a funny episode. I enjoyed it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I give it to Corey or maybe Leroy. Look at her over there looking all thick. Just the way that he said it was hilarious. It just made me laugh. Because I love Leroy and Cam. I like them as a couple. I think I like what they're doing. I love their gameplay this season. Maybe it's just Big T that was marvelous, or it was marvelous. I don't know. There's a lot. There's a lot in this episode. A lot to choose from. We went through them.
I think it's got to be the whole conversation between CT and Big T. I know that's not a line.
I'm not mad at that. I'm not.
But just the whole conversation after they were pretty sure that they won, and like the pole dancing, quite marvelous. His like thick Boston mumble, her like up what sounds to our Canadian ears as like an upper crust posh British accent. Like the whole scene just had me in stitches. It was hilarious.
Yeah, I liked it too. I thought it was good.
Where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander, on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander, YouTube Sheldon Alexander, Twitch, On Blast Podcast. We're making moves. We're doing things. We're doing things out
here. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at jchidleyhill. And until next week, this was You Killed It.
Still not going to yell again because I'm not at home right now.
On blast.